Hello everybody, it's me, GhostCritic, or you can just call me Mark for now. Thank you for joining me in this February edition of a new series of videos I'm putting out on the last Friday of every month. And it is entitled, as you probably already see somewhere up there, This Month I Have Been Mostly, which is a little bit of a detour from the full-on comic book experience that you get throughout the rest of the week. And I take a couple of different paths. I let you know what I've been listening to, what I've been watching, and also what I've been reading, which is where the comic books kind of creep back in. But you get, I guess, a rounder, fuller view of what goes on in my life over the last 4 or so weeks. So I will be telling you all about what I've been listening to music-wise, what I've been watching TV and movies, and also what I have been reading, and they're mostly graphic novels right at the moment because I've got a huge pile of them still to read. Thank you to everyone who supported the first January edition. I'm glad you've come back to hear and see some more. So if you have any recommendations for what to listen to, what to watch, please feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see if I can check them out or if it's something I would actually be interested in. But if I do listen to or watch them and use them in next month's video, please don't be upset if I don't like them. So let's get on with this and find out what I have been mostly listening to this month. For those of you who didn't catch my January edition of this new series, most of my music comes from Spotify. That's where I find out all the new music and listen to some great old stuff as well. I honestly cannot tell you the last time I bought a kind of brand new CD. I generally only buy CDs for the car and for us to listen to with like albums and compilations that we can play when we get bored of the radio. So like I say, everything I get from Spotify, and I can download them onto my phone and then listen to them offline while I'm making my merry way to work on the bus. This week I have picked out 3 new albums and 1 fantastic retro album, and one person is to blame for that. We'll find out that towards the end of this video. Now, the first album I'm going to talk about is by a British trio of DJs, producers and remixers. Now, that may put quite a few of you off because I'm going down the trance lane here. I'm talking about a band called Above and Beyond, their new album Common Ground. And I used to like trance back in the 90s in my clubbing days. I could bust some shapes and moves, stop doing that now. But I like that kind of genre of music. No, I don't go out clubbing to it all now. But the thing with trance was, especially and unfortunately with this album as well, the mainstream trance is somewhat predictable and follows a very similar path with every single track. It kind of starts off with this kind of thumping, rising bass, which suddenly stops. You get some pretty vocals from either a male or a female vocalist. The beats start coming back in, it comes to a crescendo, it fills out until it's all banging, and that's pretty much what you get with trance on repeat. So I wasn't expecting a great deal from this album. I wouldn't even really call them standout tracks, but the ones I seem to like most and the ones that I would skip ahead to was one from called Northern Soul. Has nothing to do with the musical genre at all. It's just the name of the song, but it followed that path that I've just spoken about, but it was easily listenable. And also Happiness Amplified was kind of a grower, if you want to go down that road, but I was kind of disappointed, maybe because they are, I guess, more of a mainstream trance combo, that is what you're going to get, and there may be better, more experimental trance kind of outfits out there. If you know of any, if trance is your thing, down there, let me know who they are. The second album, we kind of go from one extreme, the big bangers, to very chilled out affair with Nightmares on Wax. They have a new album out last month called Shape of the Future. Now, I remember Nightmares on Wax from way back in my college days, and the albums Car Boot Soul and Smoker's Delight were played everywhere. Everyone was listening to it, and in some ways unfairly, they were kind of put down in this chilled out stoner type music affair. But the thing is, with Nightmare on Wax, they are so much more of that, and you hear elements of that in Shape the Future. It is by no means the best Nightmares on Wax album there has ever been. For that, go see Car Boot Soul, sorry. But what you do get is this kind of eclectic mixing pot of so many different genres: hip hop, electro funk. You kind of get that world music, tribal type stuff in there, and then in this album, certainly these throwing in these spoken word kind of verses to it. It's got that very kind of optimistically positive, let's think of the future, let's shape the future. Yes, that's the title of the album. For me, I said again, it's Nightmares on Wax, but pushing into the mainstream. This maybe slightly overproduced. There are some nice tracks in there that you can just mellow out to. There's a really great bluesy number in there called Typical. It has kind of like a guest vocalist on there called Jordan Reiki, I think his name is, which I actually quite liked. Apparently it's not been well liked critically. And then there is another guest vocalist called Sadie Walker on a track called Deep Shadows, and it has all these kind of syncopated rhythms going through, and then they kind of throw in glockenspiels of all things. It's an album that I would like to go back to, and it's one of those kind of chilled out soundtracks that you can just put up on in the background and get on with something else, but have that nice kind of melodic sound in the background. Third and final new album of this month that I listened to was a band that I remember listening to way back in kind of like maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, and they pretty much consistently brought out albums throughout the 2000s especially. They are a Glaswegian outfit, and they kind of make that lovely kind of bittersweet 60s pure pop sound. I am of course talking about Belle and Sebastian. If you don't know who they are, go check out their music. They have a new album out called How to Solve Our Human Problems Part 2. I didn't know there was a Part 1. I'm going to have to go and look that up. But when I first put this on, it came as quite a shock, because I am used to, like I said, this kind of 60s pure pop sound which has that tinge of sadness to it. But right in the offset we have the opening track, Show Me the Sun, and it's quite the exhilarating track for Belle and Sebastian, I've got to say. There's this kind of forceful kind of school playground chant to it, but then they mash it together with a kind of psychedelia twang to it, and it's wonderful. I mean, you can hear it is a Belle and Sebastian track, because they have, despite the fact that these guys must be in at least in their late 30s, 40s now, it does have this kind of childish innocence to it, which is lovely to listen to and reminds me of what Belle and Sebastian used to be like. The other one that I really liked in there, because it's almost an EP. I think there's 6 tracks to the album, if I remember rightly, so it is quite short. But there's a song called Same Star, and that kind of brings me back down to the Belle and Sebastian that I know. The vocalist Sarah Martin on it, she has this kind of charming and alluring voice that's so romantic and sweet that you just get kind of immersed in the sound of her voice and this kind of romanticism of a lot of Belle and Sebastian songs. Great album. There are better Belle and Sebastian albums if you go back in their back catalogue. A Thing Called Love, that album, I'm sure it's called that, is fantastic. I loved it. I think that's what really pushed them into the kind of big public eye. They were very much a small kind of indie band, and then they kind of blew up to some extent in the late 90s, early 2000s, but great stuff. Finally, for music, and I said I had someone to blame for my retro pick of the week, and I'm blaming you, Scott, because you always talk about him, and while I don't think a week goes by when I don't listen to at least 2 or 3 of this artist's songs. Scott talks about him so often in his videos, and immediately after I've watched it, I put on some tracks. Talking about David Bowie, and one of my favourite albums. I thought, I haven't listened to that for a while, I'm going to listen to that this week. It is Station to Station. It's strange, the listening experience that you have listening to an album through different objects. I never had the album on vinyl, so I haven't got that that experience of listening to that. I don't have the best sound system for my CD player, which, you know, barely gets used now. So you get it through a laptop, you get it through Alexa. But I listened to this album again for the first time for a while through my headphones, and it was an experience, especially right at the very beginning, because at first I thought there's something wrong with my headphones because it was only coming out of one ear. But then I got what was actually going on and happening, because the very start of Station to Station, and it's not ironic, but it's kind of obvious when you think about the album title. It feels like there is a train approaching and it's coming through your ears. It starts in that ear, it kind of builds up to both ears and then kind of leaves out that way until it goes straight into the opening track. As I said, this is one of my favourite albums of David Bowie's, and it's kind of him developing his kind of funk and soul part of his extensive repartee, which we saw elements of in the album that came before it, Young Americans, and what he then used following on from there. It's so hard to pick out a standout track here. Golden Years, so hard to beat, but I love the closing track of Wild as the Wind. Who knew that was originally a song recorded by Johnny Mathis? You listen to Wild as the Wind and the passion and the emotion, the lusting, the longing. It fills me with such joy, and David Bowie is the king. He always will be. like I say, a week does not go by without me listening to at least 3 or 4 tracks. I remember the day that he died and it was on the news, and at first it was like a complete double take. I couldn't believe it that he'd gone, and I think it was, I went on to Twitter and said, actually the very first track I listened to when I got home was I'm Afraid of Americans. I don't know why. It was just in my mind. It's not like, you know, it wasn't like a John Lennon thing where he'd been killed or murdered while in America, but it's just, I don't know, it was one of the tracks that's always in my head, and I love the track as it is anyway, but for some reason I had to listen to that one first, and then of course the big explosion of the most recent album, and the only one we'll probably get now, Black Star, which was fantastic. But just station to station, if you've never listened to this album, and if you like David Bowie, I can't believe you haven't, go check it out. It is incredibly accessible, given it's so early on really in David Bowie's career, but it is incredibly accessible to anyone, and it has some great tracks on it. Go check it out. So that's what I've been mostly listening to this month. Let's go on to our next portion of the video. Okay, so what has been tantalising my eyeballs this past month? As with music, and I get everything I listen to from Spotify, pretty much everything I watch comes from Netflix. I don't buy movies on DVD, and TV shows I usually get other people to buy me them on DVD if it's something that I know I'm going to watch over and over again. So Netflix is a great, relatively cheap option to pay monthly to watch all this stuff that not necessarily I would watch. This week, 2 movies, 1 TV show, and 3... well, we'll get to it. Let's start with the movies, because unfortunately the 2 that I've picked to talk to you about, they weren't great, but they were enjoyably entertaining for what they were. I'm a big fan of horror movies. I kind of love a lot of the found footage type of horror movies. So when I saw the film called Temple was put on Netflix just recently here in the UK, I thought, yeah, great, we'll give that a shot. Centred around these 3 Americans who travel to, I don't know if it's, I think it's Japan, and they're going seeking out, one of the girls is a student, she's brought her boyfriend along and her best male friend, and they are looking for these temples for her studies. And they find out about this particular temple, but it's the typical everyone tells them not to go there, so what do? They go there. The thing with Temple is it's not quite sure what it wants to be. On the one hand, you've got elements of the kind of found footage, and then on the other, it's just a regular movie. On one hand, you have a kind of foreign language film, but on the other, it won't stick to it, and so brings in the kind of English language into the melting pot. So it's kind of a mishmash of all these things. But the main problem with it is it takes too long to build up, and then when it does get there, it finishes like that. And you just think there was a real great premise there that just wasn't developed. We're talking about this group of school kids that have gone missing out in the woods up in the temple. You've got this mysterious figure that keeps following them. You're not sure whether it's there to protect them or to attack them. and then you have this statue of a woman without any arms, kind of a Venus de Milo type affair, that spoilers, I guess, because it's clear that it is going to come to life and it's going to come and attack them. But it feels, I mean, it's rated as 15, so it's not like all out scary horror. It's enough so the teens can get involved and enjoy something mildly scary. There's very little in the way of even jump scares to the movie, unfortunately. But like I said, it was okay to watch for an evening where there wasn't much else on telly. Now, the other movie, again, it's a strange old one, and I'm surprised to see the actor Pierce Brosnan in it. I was going to say Bronson. Brosnan in it. Good old James Bond for a short amount of time. It's called Urge, and I don't want to be all punny about it, but I kind of urge you not to watch this. But maybe I just kind of missed the point on it. Again, it centres around these 5 friends, but they're like spoiled rich kids in a way. The main guy, he's like a 1%er, he's insanely rich, and he takes his 4 friends for this weekend of, you know, just being completely pampered and spoiled. And they find out about a drug called Urge, and it's kind of meant to take away all your inhibitions and let you be free and enjoy, you know, your night and give you the best experience ever, which they do have at this party, despite the fact that this party, it's for a drug that releases completely all your inhibitions, they are quite tame in what they really get up to the first time. And this is where the kind of twist in this movie happens, is that they are given this rule that you can only take it once. There's no explanation as to why you can only take it once, but of course they're going to take it again, aren't they? And this is where it all kind of leads to them either dying or having kind of supposed epiphanies about themselves. And it's not particularly preaching about how drugs are bad per se, but I guess it's a commentary about the addictive nature of human beings in general, and the path that humans inevitably will go down. And like I've said before about these kind of sci-fi, I mean, it's not a sci-fi movie in the slightest, but the whole science fiction genre seems to point towards us completely ruining the planet, and we're going to end up in this post-apocalyptic universe. And this is kind of what its seeds are, that we will go back to our id, our kind of basic instincts, and this is what the film tries to do, but it does it in such a lame way. I mean, you have the 5 people, I think it's 5 or 6. You have the incredibly rich guy, his sort of girlfriend who doesn't really seem to like him. You have the guy and another guy and his girlfriend, and it's the kind of combo with, how has this guy managed to get this gorgeous woman so easily when he's not really that good looking himself. You've got the single white guy who is kind of the butt of everyone's jokes, but oh, we're all friends, it's okay. And you get the single girl who's a beautiful woman but doesn't think she is. And the trials and tribulations they all go through in the movie. But it's just so lukewarm. It doesn't push it far enough. And no one really looks like they're having the greatest time of their life. I I don't know how I managed to do this, because normally I would have just switched it off as the closing credits had gone. But if you do watch this, watch till the end of the credits, because there's a kind of a quick 2-minute scene where, and I won't spoil it for you, but just watch to the very end and you'll see how far-reaching this drug potentially has got. So those are the two movies. Not the greatest. I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful about what I watch movie-wise for you next month. Hopefully I have something that'll go, you've got to watch this. TV-wise, I'm only really going to talk very briefly about one new Netflix show that I wonder if many of you have watched already, and that is the new sci-fi series with Joel Kinnaman, Altered Carbon. And I'm taking it easy. I don't binge watch these shows as soon as they come out, regardless of what they are. I take it steady. So I think I'm about 3 or 4 episodes in, and it looks beautiful. It does. Netflix have obviously spent a lot of money in making this look nice, and you kind of get that Blade Runner / Matrixy feel to it all. The premise of it is that Joel Kinnaman has been kind of brought out of this hibernation, I guess, that he's been in for 250 years. He was a criminal. He's been put in this new body. This is how people live now. You know, the very, very rich can have their, I don't know, their essence, I guess. Still trying to work that out, but the essence of them put into someone else's body, so when they get old they don't need to die and they can have a younger body, and obviously the richer you are, the better looking body you get. And Joel Kinnaman comes back and he is given the job of finding out how this guy was murdered. This guy was murdered. His body, his essence is now in a new body, and he's hiding to find out who murdered him. It's not as confusing as it really sounds, but there are just elements of it that really kind of irk me, and I find a little bit cliched, like the female cop detective who really starts with just has this bugbear about the Joel Kinnaman character. And you just know that as the series progresses, they're going to start getting on better and probably work together. And it's just such a predictable kind of plot point that goes forwards. Again, as I said when I was talking about Urge the movie, and I put this out on Twitter as well, and I didn't really get anyone reply, but I'd love to know a sci-fi movie where we haven't screwed up the planet, where we haven't turned it into this either post-apocalyptic universe or this kind of corporate, big business run, you know, the mega rich live the greatest life and everyone else is basically scum, which feels a lot like what we're living in now, and is a kind of forewarning us of what we're already living in. But is there a movie that does that? A science fiction movie? I doubt it. I obviously will watch the rest of this show. Sci-fi series, I love them, especially of this ilk. Joel Kinnaman, I knew from when he was in the Netflix show The Killing. There's 3 seasons of that. If you haven't seen that, that's a great kind of cop murder mystery type show that runs over 3 seasons. Great stuff in that. Was based on, I think it's either a Norwegian or a Scandinavian TV show, but it's a fantastic series, and he's great in that, and he's just as good in here, and you can clearly see he's been working out a little bit. That boy is buff. But great series nonetheless, and I'll be watching that till the very end. Now the last 3 I want to talk about is something I watch a lot of, unfortunately. Netflix does have a lot of these shows, so I can pick and choose and play and see if I like them or not. I watch a lot of anime. I know, and I'm surprised that the likes of people like Scott don't really like anime. I'm sure I've heard him say he's not a big fan of it, and I'm surprised because there is some wild and wacky crazy stuff out there, and the genres that anime kind of traverse are so at opposite spectrums, and the three that I've picked out on here kind of show that, and I can't believe there isn't something, whether you're only a kind of a brief viewer of anime or you supposedly completely dislike anime, that you can't find something that you would actually like. Let's start off with Violet Evergarden, a weekly series that comes out from Netflix, and it's just the strangest anime I've seen for a while. And not that it's kind of out there, it's like a big acid trip, but it's about these women, and they're in this office and they write letters for people who can't express their feelings, or basically can't read or write. So they write the letters for them after listening to their stories. And it centres around this one girl who has clearly been in the army. Her kind of mentor, this kind of father figure, dies in the army, but he tells her, go live your life, be great. She loses her hands somehow in this war, and now she has kind of metal hands. And it's just about her and her dealing with the unfamiliarity of emotions. She's very kind of soldier-like. She kind of wants orders. She sees everything as a mission, and has to have an objective, and is unable, for the episodes that I've seen so far, hopefully she will flourish and become more of a human being, so to speak, by the end of it. But it's just the strangest show. It's very kind of alluring's the wrong word. Wistful, does that fit it? Go watch it. It's the strangest thing, but it's not slow, but it's quiet. It's all about characters rather than big spectacles. Now let's go to another extreme, and another new series that started on Netflix called, I think I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but it's Kakegurui. And again, strangeness abounds, but we're raising the crazy barrier here, as we have this very la-di-da college. All the rich kids go there. You've got to be incredibly, smart and brainy to be there. But everyone, all the school children there that go there, are obsessed with gambling. And a new girl is introduced to this school. She's all prim and proper. The kind of head bitch challenges her to a game of gambling for money, a lot of money, of rock, paper, scissors, only they play it with cards. And it's just that kind of very over-the-top expressions and just general weirdness. How do you make a story about a college, a very affluent college, where the kids are obsessed with gambling? Where does the story come from that? But I saw the first episode, and that's all I've seen, but I'm just like, I need to see where this goes. It's just the craziest thing. Finally, and this goes off in another complete direction. That's Devilman Crybaby. Ooh! This is very adult. This is very sexual. This is very over the top. Kind of the anime, the monsters, the demons. Obviously, Devilman is a big devil with wings, only he's half devil, half man, so he's kind of a good guy. But it's just that over-the-top anime style where it's that kind of imagination. Where does it all come from? Where does that crazy creative juice start from in there and then come out on the screen? It's a great looking show, but not one to watch with the kids with you. There's sex scenes, there's breasts, there's ultra violence all over the place. But yeah, that's what I have been mostly watching this month. So finally, to finish off this month's pop cultureness, it's what have I been mostly reading this month. And I'm going to kick off with some comic books. I didn't do a whole video on these, but if you were on Twitter around about Christmas time, you will have seen these bevy of beauties that I got given as a Christmas present off my partner. And it's a kind of the early 70s, I want to say, but certainly Bronze Age goodness of Daredevil from the kind of Jerry Conway, Gene Colan days. And these are fantastic. And this is what I've been saying about Daredevil in general in the new series, where Charles Soule is doing a great job. I mean, that's obvious, but he seems at times to have forgotten that, it's a Daredevil book. It's not a Matt Murdock lawyer courtroom book. He's addressing that at the moment. But just looking at these fantastic covers, the last one, the Scorpion. Who knew that Daredevil went up against the Scorpion? Generally, Spider-Man villain. Electro he went up against, all these great villains, but you just don't see them anymore in the Daredevil that we have today, and it's saddening. Great when they mashed up Daredevil and Black Widow for a time. I think they moved over to California and Matt lived with the Black Widow for a while. I mean, it's just fantastic covers. These are the days when, Marvel Comics and their covers used to just be fantastic. And these what really drew you in. You don't really see these ones where they're actually talking on the cover. And you get the kind of like the great, we've got Stiltman here. The title, Where Stalks the Stiltman? You just don't see that really on comic books anymore, especially with Marvel. They're just these, I won't say bog standard, because they look pretty, but they are literally just posters. Finally, I have got more, but I haven't read them yet, and they're still in my box to be read. But just such a great early series and early selection of Daredevil books that my partner managed to find on the internet for me at hopefully a good price, but they paid for them. What the hell? 2 graphic novels that I'm working my way through this month. Almost finished both of them. This month, the latest of these great collected BPRD books. This is obviously a spin-off of that, but these great Dark Horse omnibus volumes. This is the Abe Sapien Dark and Terrible Volume 1. Mike Mignola, Scotty Alley, John Arcudi, Max Fiumara, Sebastian Fumara, Dave Stewart, all bringing Abe Sapien into a solo book of his own. I've got the BPRD ones, The Plague of Frogs. Hell on Earth is coming out very soon, if not the first volume already out. But Abe Sapien was a character that was great in BPRD. However, I'm not struggling with him, but I guess does he hold my attention as much as a solo character? The stories, he does say in this, the kind of reading order, I should have looked this up beforehand, to kind of read these in, and it kind of comes between, I think it's volume 2 and 3, this story kind of comes in, if I remember rightly, if you wanted to kind of read it in order. But this is when the story where it's all kind of hit the fan, so to speak, and all the big beasties and the monsters have basically been taking over the cities, and Abe Sapien is kind of, it's almost a book about him trying to find himself in some respects, and he's kind of going on these travels through, I'm guessing it's America, because they're kind of like, the bits that I've so far read, they're kind of like backwater kind of towns and villages, kind of places where he's having these adventures, I guess. The artwork is fantastic. I mean, it's what you expect from a BPRD book, and it's just still dealing with that whole kind of Cthulhu, mythical creatures type deal. It's a great volume. I'm definitely going to be getting the next one, and clearly going to be getting BPRD Hell on Earth when they come out in these wonderful, very affordable actually, books, but great bedtime reading. Something that you may not want to read in bed because it's a little bit scary. Richard Corbin's Shallows on the Grave, again, Dark Horse, putting out these great, so affordable kind of collected works, and you know, I mean, I got the first issue of this, didn't realise it was an ongoing as such, but it's kind of like, you shouldn't like it as much as you do, because it does feel like you're basically being transported back in time to, and it feels like you're reading back issues or maybe reprints of kind of 70s horror comics in those kind of magazine format anthology series, because the style of Richard Corbin, and it is fantastic, he is a genius, kind of not just artist but storyteller as well, because they are quite what we would see as tame, I guess. And the stories, you know, it's an anthology series. The actual stories maybe last 4 or 5 pages at the most, and they do feel, you know, you already know what's going to happen by the end of that particular story. But there's something about Corbin and his working with the horror genre that just, it's just brilliant, and just you feel so engrossed in the story, and before you know it, you're like halfway through this alone. It's all done in black and white. That you may not like that as much as if they were coloured. Apparently, again, I haven't got right to the back, but I think with Corbin, his work is best when it is in black and white. However, you know, you get some colour shots at the back, towards the back of the book, which kind of, I guess, to some extent bring a lot of it to more gruesome life. But his best work is when he's doing it in the kind of the black, whites and greys that we're used to. But again, I'm glad that I was bought this for Valentine's Day. What does that say about the love that I have in my life, that I get this horror anthology? I asked for it, who am I kidding? But again, great stuff, and that's basically what I've been reading this week. thank you to everyone for joining in and getting this far with me. Thank you to everyone who's going to now thumb this video up. As I said, leave lots of comments down there. Tell me what else I should listen to, watch, and if I get the chance to buy them, read as well, because I have a huge stack of graphic novels that I have gradually whittling my way down from before I get bought even more. So until the next month, last Friday of March, when you will do this all again, thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.